Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So last class I described for you the syllabus, okay, for the this module that deals with an introduction to sociolinguistics. So I mentioned all that, but I just want to hear because I forgot to mention two other axes that we will try to deal with as well. Okay, now this is where we stopped last time, but I didn't introduce this. So another thing that we'll try to deal with is language use and attitudes, right? Language use and attitudes. That is to say, how people use dialects, languages, and the attitudes of the people with regard to the languages we have. In our context, for example, like Morocco. This is very crucial. Why? Because many times we have people using a specific kind of language, using a specific kind of dialect because of an attitude. Now, for example, if I give you the instance of middle social class, so you know that middle social class, they have a specific kind of positive attitude towards French, right? They consider it like a kind of prestigious language. So the middle class as well as the rich, the high class, they tend to use more of French in their everyday life communication. So you see, it's because of their attitude towards French that they tend to use it more. You can have other categories of people who have a different opinion about French. They say that French is a language of colonization, and we have our culture, Islamic culture or Arabic culture or whatever, and therefore French is a kind of foreign language, foreign culture for us. Why should we use French? So therefore what happens is that they don't use French, but they just focus on using Arabic, Moroccan Arabic, Standard Arabic in their everyday life communication. Now this is another example that shows that the attitude of the people determines, right, the language use, the way how people use a specific kind of dialect or a specific kind of language. Another example is, for example, here we are in a region that is majority Sus, Amazigh. Okay. Now many people belong to this ethnic group. And then they have positive attitudes towards Amazigh, so it's their language, it's part of their culture, it's part of their identity, and so on and so forth. So they have really big positive attitudes towards French. And what happens is that they tend to use it more, of course, in their everyday life. But if you go to other areas where we don't have a lot of Amazigh, so we don't have this, because of the attitude of people. So this is an area that we will try to deal with throughout the lectures, the language use and attitudes. Another last component we try to deal with is related to language policy and language planning. It's part of sociolinguistics. It has to do with the way people use language. Now, of course, these people, a speech community, they have a kind of government. Okay. Now they try to establish a kind of planning, language planning, language policy for their speech community on the basis of which dialect, which language, which variety they consider the most important, and they try to adopt it as a national language, right? As an example of this language planning, we will focus mainly on this Arabization process that has taken place in Morocco. It's a language planning, it's a policy that has been adopted by the Moroccan government after independence. Because as you know, after independence, during colonialism and after independence shortly, we used to have mostly everything in French, including mathematics, in education. For example, we used to have mathematics in French, geography in French, history in French. Mostly everything was in French, including the administration. Right? Now what happened is that because of the independence and because of this patriotic feeling, patriotic attitude towards Arab culture, because we want to get independent, not only by asking the colonials to go away, but also by trying to stick to our culture. So what happened is that they tried, of course, to advocate this language planning policy called Arabization, in the sense that they tried to Arabize, okay, all scientific subjects. Now, mathematics started to be taught in Arabic, and you are all of you, like me, of that generation. You have science, biology, you have history, geography, everything started to be taught in Arabic, okay? And this is a part of this Arabization process. Of course, as we are going to see later on, it had suffered from some problems, as we are going to see later on. We will discuss the details later on. But this is just briefly what we mean by this language planning policy called Arabization, right? So now with this, I am done with the syllabus, introducing the syllabus to you, and I move on to today's lecture. So by the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain what sociolinguists study. This is what we'll try to learn in this lecture. What is the aim of sociolinguists? What do sociolinguists try to investigate? What are the questions they raise and for which they try to find answers? Discuss different meanings of bilingualism. As we're going to see, there are different types of bilingualism. There is what we call individual bilingualism, related to the individual by himself or herself. And then there is what we call societal bilingualism. So we'll discuss the different meanings of bilingualism and what it means. So, the first thing we have to deal with in relation to the first question, what sociolinguists study, is determine the scope, as I told you in my introduction of the syllabus last class, the scope of sociolinguistics. Okay? What sociolinguists study. And as I explained last time, sociolinguistics is a sub-branch of the main specialty called linguistics. Right? So you have linguistics, and as I said last time, can be divided into two parts. There is what we can call the core linguistics, and the core linguistics or the core linguistic sub-branches like phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, they try to analyze language per se. Okay? Language per se, alone, without taking into account any other variables. But in addition to these main core sub-branches, there are other sub-branches that incorporate and try to investigate language in relationship to other variables, like sociolinguistics and like psycholinguistics. Here we have a combination of two disciplines. Psycholinguistics, you have psychology, and then you have linguistics. So we try to investigate language from a psychological point of view, and in this regard, there is they study what is referred to as language acquisition 1 and language acquisition 2. They try to investigate how a human being acquires language. What are the psychological prerequisites that a human being has and that help him to acquire a language. So this is psycholinguistics. And then there is pragmatics, that tries to deal with the intentions, okay, that tries to investigate language by taking into account the intention of the speaker, right, by taking into account the context where the utterance takes place, pragmatics. And then there is semantics, okay, semantics, so here still focus just on the language, focus on the meaning, okay? And then there are other branches like neurolinguistics that tries to deal the relationship between the brain and the language. What are the things that we have in our brain and that help us to acquire language? So they say that they will have specific kinds of places in our brain that help us acquire language. So that's why you can have people who haven't been successful in learning a language because of a damage in their brain. And that's where they talk about aphasia, for example, one of the illnesses that some people suffer from. They can't speak appropriately. Why? Because they have a damage in the brain, somewhere in the brain. So these are some other sub-branches of linguistics. But our main focus here is sociolinguistics, okay, that deals with the relationship between, of course, language and society, that deals and tries to investigate how societal, okay, or variables related to society, like education, like socioeconomic status, like environment, rural versus urban, like ethnic background. So all these variables you can see, they are related to society, like occupation, and we're going to see the details. So, what do sociolinguists study? These are some of the questions that we try to answer in our lecture today. What do sociolinguists study? What determines language use? In other words, what influences language use? Our own language use. What are the variables that do influence our language use? What is variety and what is a code? Variety or a code. What is the meaning of bilingualism? What is individual bilingualism? As I told you, there are two types of bilingualism. There is what is referred to as individual bilingualism, that has to do with the individual, because you know that people are different in this regard. Some people speak two languages very well, okay, and others don't. And there is also societal bilingualism. So we'll try to deal with the different types of bilingualism and what they mean. What is societal bilingualism? What is first language? And what is second language? Because when we are talking about bilingualism, we are talking about two languages. So, of course, there is one that comes before another in bilingualism. The child acquires one language first and then acquires another one second. So there is what is called a first language and what is called a second language. So there is some kind of discussion in this regard that we try to go into briefly and discuss it. So you can try to take notes, but if you miss something, so as I told you, we'll find this online, so you can have it all the time with you, right? So let's ask you, so I have already talked about this several times, so now let's ask you about this. What does sociolinguistics study? I don't want it to be a kind of one person speaking and you listening. I try to cut the lecture into different. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, so the relationship between society and linguistics, right? Mhm. Yes, sir. Yes, of course. The study of language as a social phenomena. The study of language as a social phenomena. That is how language is used within the society. Okay? Yes, please.
Social problems that stops the learning process of language.
Yes, the social problems that stop the learning process of a language. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes, please.
How language is used by individuals inside society.
Yes, how language is used by individuals inside society, inside the speech community, to use the sociolinguistic term, within the speech community.
How can the language reflect society?
How language reflects society, right? And vice versa. How society reflects language. And here we will see this later on when we talk about this famous hypothesis, Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, etc., which determines the other. Does language determine the culture, or the culture determines the language? So something related to that. Yes. Yes, sir. How language is influenced varieties. So, or in other words, I would prefer a better formulation, expression, how language manifests itself in the form of different varieties. Like Standard Arabic, that's a language, it manifests itself in the form of different varieties depending on geography. For example, in Morocco we have Moroccan Arabic, and then Egyptian Arabic, the Gulf Arabic, Middle Eastern Arabic. So how language manifests itself in the, and also within the society, one society itself. Okay, as I told you, yes, we have different social classes, right? So each social class uses a specific kind of language in his own way, in its own way. Okay, so that's the aim of sociolinguistics. It tries to investigate the relationship between language and society. In other words, sociolinguistics try to answer this question: how does society, people, what they do, and what they are, who they are with, affect the ways people speak? How does society affect the ways people speak? And when we talk about society, we talk about who these people are, what they do, and who they are with, because that's society, right? Now, as it's this context, here we have, you are students, I am a teacher, right? This is a context that determines the language we use. You are students of the Department of English, and you are coming to study sociolinguistics in the Department of English, so we use language. That's the language used in this department to study this subject. So, how does society affect the ways people speak? In other words, what social factors, sociolinguistics try to find out what social factors can account for linguistic variation. As I explained last time, within a speech community, language is varied, is used in different ways. Now, what's the reason? Does this mean that it has to do with the language itself? Or the reasons are related to society itself? The reasons are related to the society, to the variables of society that account for this linguistic variation. So some examples of aspects of sociolinguistics we will study in this module. Examples are: who do you use Arabic? Why do you use Arabic differently when you talk to me, your lecturer, from when you talk to a stranger, or especially when you talk to another student or a friend of yours? If you look at your Moroccan Arabic that you are going to speak with me, it's going to be maybe formal, or a lot of things, elevated kind of Moroccan Arabic, because your lecturer, teacher, you still have some respects for your teachers. So, but when you are with your friend in a cafe or just having fun together, so your Moroccan Arabic tends to be different. It's very informal and different from the one that you use with your lecturer. So this is exactly an example of what we try to deal with. Okay, we'll try to find answers for this. Why do you do that? What's the reason behind that language variation there? Okay. Why do you use Arabic differently when you talk to your fellow student in class from when you talk to him or her in the cafe? You are in the class and then you talk to your friend, still it's going to be different from when you are together in a cafe. So why? What is the reason behind that as well? Why there is this language variation? So this is what we will try to deal with in this module. We'll try to find out the reasons why we have this, and how sociolinguistics as a discipline accounts for this language variation. Okay? So you understand these situations here. And that's exactly what you have, what you do in everyday life, right? In everyday communication when you are especially at campus. Why do you sometimes switch from Arabic or Amazigh to French or English in the middle of a sentence? Yes, that's what happens. Of course, especially in our context. We have a lot of this, right? And it's becoming more and more frequent in our community, right? You have a lot of people mixing languages a lot, as if we know everything or all the languages. But then if you go really deep into the situation, the situation is different, right? So why do you do that? When you are speaking to your friend or whoever, you can switch from Arabic to Amazigh, or from Amazigh to Arabic, or to French or English. That's what sociolinguistics tries to find out. As you can see from the questions, we are dealing with languages. That's why you have linguistics there. But then the reasons behind this language variation, they are related to society, to the variables of society. What are some of the differences between the ways men and women use language? Another situation that we have in all speech communities. Men and women somehow speak differently from each other. Now, what is the reason? And here we are going to deal with a variable that is gender. Okay? Do people of different ages speak differently? This is another situation that we have. Adolescents, the children, the adults, the old people, they speak differently. They use languages differently. Since this is another variable that we will deal with, it's as mentioned in there, related to age. Okay? What can a language tell about the social background of a person? What can a language tell you about the social background of a person? I'm sure that when you meet people for the first time, you can guess their social background. Either you can tell that this person is coming from a high socioeconomic status or middle socioeconomic status or a poor, low socioeconomic status. That's one thing. You can tell if this person is coming from an urban area or a rural area. You can tell if this person is coming from the north or the middle of the country or the south of the country. So you can have an idea about the social background of people depending on the language they use, depending on the way they use language. This is another thing that sociolinguistics tries to deal with. Will language die? It's part of sociolinguistics as well. It tries to investigate this area. And this is a phenomenon that takes place, that happens. There are languages that die, right? For example, we are dealing with English, but before English there used to be another language no more existing now. Okay, Latin. Okay, so will the language die? And this phenomenon, the death of languages or language shift or etc., it has to do in many regards with society and how society functions, how society works. Okay, the politics within the society, the culture within the society, and how the generations are developing, the technology, again, as we are having nowadays. So all these variables, they try to play a role in the death of a language or in the survival of a language. How do languages change over time? Language change phenomenon. We're not going to go into the deep because this has to do mostly with another subdiscipline of linguistics that is called historical linguistics. It's a branch in itself. But we'll try to see why, or how languages change and what are the reasons behind that. If you remember last time in my description of the syllabus, I talked about pigeons and Creoles. You remember? And we said that pigeons, basically, it's a very kind of simple code created by business people, okay? And it's very limited, it's very simple, used only for business. If you go outside, you can't use it. But then by the time, there are some children who are born for those business people, and they learn it and they develop it. So that's how language changes, right? It's an aspect that has to do with language change. What languages should we use or teach in school? This has to do with the language planning I mentioned in the beginning of today's lecture as a continuation of the description of the syllabus for that I presented last class. Why, for example, when you went to school, primary school, you started learning or you were taught Arabic, standard Arabic, and then French, and then at a later stage, English. Why you were taught mathematics, biology, physics, history, geography in Arabic, especially the scientific subject. But then at university, those people who want to specialize in them, they start learning them in French. These are some of the issues that we try to deal with, and it has to do with society and how whole society and the politics of society and the culture of society works, right? Now, in more details, the variables that determine language, can I have some suggestions from you before I go into them? What do you think are these variables? Because I have already mentioned them, okay? Indirectly you can guess them. But now I will stop, I will mention them clearly. But before I go ahead with that, I would like to elicit some of them from you. What are these variables that determine language use, that affect or influence the way we use language in our speech community? For example, yes? When a language is, what do you mean by language is a variable? Common. Yeah, of course. We're talking about something common. But I want you to tell me the variables, the variables related to society, okay? And that affects the way we use language. The variables, okay? Sociolinguistics, social variables. Yes, please. The context, for example. Now, we have mentioned the example of you now sitting in a class, and the way we use language is different from if you go to the cafe with your friend. So the context, that's a kind of variable related to society, and that determines language use.
The position of your class.
The position of your class, that is to say, low socioeconomic status, or middle socioeconomic status, or high socioeconomic status. Yes? The formality of the situation or the context. Is it formal or informal? Culture, diversification or diversity within the culture. Like for example here, especially related to ethnic background. Amazigh, Arabophone. Yes? Occupation, you mean the job, right? Religion. Okay, they do affect the way we use language, yes?
Environment, geography.
Yes, environment. The environment. We're talking here about either rural environment or urban environment. The geography. You have also mentioned the geography. That is to say the north, the south, the middle. Yes? The level of education as well. It plays a role in the way we use language. Age and ethnic background. Reality. What do you mean by reality? It's very big, yeah? That's our problem, reality. Okay? Yes? So we try, now what we are doing is try to talk about this reality in specific terms. For example, ethnic background, context, formal, informal, etc.
Gender and age.
Gender and age. Thank you, that's good. Okay, good. Why? So it's why do you use Arabic differently? So this is a question that we have already asked. Now, to answer these questions or to find out the factors that determine language use, the participants. Who are the participants in the communication, in the interaction? The participants are friends, or they are a student with a teacher, or a boss with an employee, or a grandfather with a son. So the participants, who are these participants? And here I would like to refer to a very good title of an article by Fishman. He gave a good title because the title summarizes the scope of sociolinguistics. The article published in Fishman in 1965. And the article is called Who Speaks, What Language, To Whom, and When. It's a very good title that I would like you to remember because it summarizes the scope of sociolinguistics. Who, the participants, speaks what language, to whom, participants again, and when, context. Okay, it tries to, this question tries to encompass, to include most variables of society that determine the way we use language. Who? speaks what language, to whom, and when. It's a very good article. If you find it, please read it. You can find it online, I guess. And then it's by Fishman. Fishman, like fish, to fish, a fish. And then men at the end. Fishman, 1965. So the participants, that's one variable that determines the language, the way we use language, okay, language use. The setting, or the context, the setting, the place, cafe versus classroom, parliament versus restaurant, TV versus, for example, another radio program or something else. So the setting, the place, the context, where the language is used. So who speaks what language, to whom, and when. When, where as well. We can add there when and where. Okay? The topic you are talking about. I'm sure that when you are revising together among your friends, you are revising sociolinguistics. Okay, your language is going to go further into English. You will use English more than use Arabic or Amazigh, right? I was a student like you, and that's what happened to me. I think the same thing happens to you. No? Yes, sure. Because usually, you have a lot of terms and that you have to learn in English and etc. So the topic also determines language use. Last time I talked about register, if you remember. That has to do with occupation, the job, and also it has to do with the topic as well. So the mechanics, their topic is about mechanics. Doctors, it's about medications and sicknesses, illnesses, biology, human body, etc. The function of language. We will see this basically when we are going to deal with a concept that is common in Morocco, that is diglossia. Diglossia. And we will see there that diglossia, it means that there are two varieties, okay, belonging to the same origin, used within the speech community. In other words, in our community, we have, in everyday life and everywhere, we have two varieties. We have Moroccan Arabic and we have Standard Arabic. Now, each kind of variety has got a specific kind of function. Standard Arabic is called a high variety because it's used only for formal situations, etc., and doing business and administration, education, the function of language. While Moroccan Arabic is called as a low variety because it's used in informal situations, everyday life. So the function of the language, okay? The function of language determines our language use as well. So the function. We will come back to it in detail, diglossia. Remember this term. Social dimensions have to do with socioeconomic status, right? Don't need to repeat again that the low or people who are coming from the low socioeconomic status speak differently from people coming from the high socioeconomic, and so on and so forth. Solidarity, social distance scale. Solidarity, this issue is very common in this area. Usually you find Amazigh people, because I'm not Amazigh, okay? But you notice that when they are together, they tend to use Amazigh. Okay? And that has to do with the solidarity issue. Okay? Social distance scale. How much you are intimate in terms of solidarity, etc. Status scale, the status of language, determines the language as well. Formality scale. Sometimes all of these are related. You can find them together. For example, when we talk about functions, we can also talk about formal and informal context. And we talk about the setting as well. So they are, we can find them together, okay? It doesn't mean that each one determines language use only alone, okay? But in combination with other variables. Function scale, so this is already mentioned in there. Now, what is a variety or a code? Spolsky, 1998, he says that variety is a term we use to include any identifiable kind of language. Identifiable kind of language, some kind of language. Okay? That's a variety. It's a kind of umbrella, if you wish to say it so. Okay, the general term, the variety, and then from this general term you can have languages, you can have dialects, you can have vernaculars, you can have registers, you can have, so it's all types of things, okay, together. So it's a term we use to include any identifiable kind of language. For example, these two types of identifiable kinds of languages, these Hakka and Cantonese, they are two varieties of Chinese. So, okay, you have Chinese, and then in some areas you have Hakka, and some others you have Cantonese. This is for China. But our context, you have Tamazight, Tashlhit, Tarifit are different varieties of Amazigh. Right? Same thing for Arabic. You have Standard Arabic, then you have Moroccan Arabic, Egyptian Arabic, Saudi Arabic, Syrian Arabic, Lebanese Arabic, and so on and so forth. Moroccan Arabic and Egyptian Arabic are different varieties of Standard Arabic. So this is an abbreviation. Moroccan Arabic and Egyptian Arabic are different varieties of Standard Arabic. The same thing for English in general. English, it also has varieties. You can have Scottish English, you can have Australian English, New Zealand English, and so on and so on. Yes, Irish, etc. Okay, I'm going. So Morocco, definitely Morocco is a multilingual speech community. Within this speech community, you have bilingual individuals, let's say individuals who speak two languages, sometimes they speak more than two languages, and concerning the speech community altogether, or the society altogether, it's also referred to as a kind of bilingual society or multilingual society, because there are more than two languages spoken in Morocco, right? So in this regard, we can talk about individual bilingualism and societal bilingualism. Within a speech community. Now, just to tell you a definition of speech community, because that's the first thing we have to start with. I have already mentioned, but I repeat it again. It can be defined as a community in which the same language is used. You can write if you wish. A speech community is defined as a community a speech community is defined as a community in which the same language is spoken, is used by people belonging to this community. Speech community is defined as a community, a group of people, a community, in which the same language is used by the people belonging to that community. Now I give you a quotation by Himes, 1977, a definition of speech community. So Himes, H-Y-M-E-S, Himes, H-Y-M-E-S, 1977. And then you can open the quotations. A speech community is defined as tautologically. That's why quotations are a bit difficult. But you can write, I spell it for you, okay? I can help you. Tautologically, it's Tautol. I repeat again. Tautol. Tautologically. Now you can finish it on your own by yourself. Tautologically, but radically. Tautologically, but radically, comma, but radically, comma, as a community sharing knowledge, as a community sharing knowledge of rules, as a community sharing knowledge of rules for the conduct, knowledge of rules for the conduct, and interpretation of speech, and interpretation of speech. Good? Now, let's see what is the meaning of bilingualism. Simply, it is the ability to use two languages. It is the ability to use two languages. That's bilingualism, just two. Now, for more than two, it's multilingualism, right? The ability to use two languages. Bilingualism is the ability to use two languages. Example, Arabic and Amazigh. Or Amazigh and Arabic, as you like. You can choose the order you want, no problem. I choose this one because that's my order. I started learning Arabic and then Amazigh. But for you, maybe it's some of you, maybe many of you, it's the opposite. Amazigh, then Arabic. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. ماشي مشكلة. Amazigh or Arabic comes first, no problem. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, that's very good. Thank you. So one definition of a bilingual. A bilingual, it's one who possesses at least one of the language skills, even to a minimal degree, in the second language. Try to write it, please. This is a definition by McNamara, 1967. It's not as evident as you might guess. You might guess that, yeah, bilingualism, a bilingual, it's clear. It's somebody who speaks two languages. But the sociolinguists, they differ somehow among each other. So, for example, this one, write it and then we will explain it. So one who possesses at least one of the language skills, even to a minimal degree, in the second language. Anybody can help explain this before I explain it? It's simple, very simple. Just try to make some thinking and say your suggestion. Okay? Anybody? Come on, time is running. So here, this person, he's referring to a situation where you can have one person, and this person, of course, knows the first language very well, but then knows very little of French. According to McNamara, he's bilingual. That's the meaning of this definition. One who possesses at least one of the language skills, I say, he can be good, he knows, for example, Amazigh or Arabic, Moroccan, and then for French, maybe just orally, he knows. That's oral skill. But when it comes to writing, not good. He doesn't know how. And we have this a lot. Still, we have them in Suq al-Had, if you go to the people doing business there. Many of them, old people, they speak French, Amazigh, of course, and French, but then if you ask them to write or, they don't know. So according to this McNamara, they are bilingual. Okay? So this is what he means by this definition. One who possesses at least one of the language skills, even to a minimal degree, in the second language. Another, by this complicated name, Ostracher, 1974. Those bilingual people, they are those who demonstrate complete mastery of two different languages without interference between the two linguistic processes. This is completely the opposite of the first definition, right? Yes, he's talking about mastery of the first language and the second language in all skills. Not like our friends in Sociolinguistics. So they are not, according to him, they are not bilinguals because they can't write and because they have problems listening and so on and so forth. So he's talking about people like you, Amazigh and English, or Arabic and Amazigh, okay? Having complete mastery of two different languages without interference between the two linguistic processes. And fluency here, he's talking about fluency in using the two languages. So here you can see the difference between sociolinguists. It has to do with the degree of bilingualism, of mastery, degree of mastery of the two languages. They differ simply in this regard. So one of them is less than the other. Good? We move on. Bilingualism is understood to begin at the point where the speaker of one language can produce complete, meaningful utterances in the other language. When somebody starts to produce complete, meaningful utterances, sentences in the other language, he is referred to as a bilingual. There is bilingualism. He has bilingualism. Complete, it's very important here. He says complete, meaningful utterances. Okay, complete sentences, utterances that are meaningful. At that stage, when that person starts to do that, that's bilingualism. He's said to be a bilingual. Okay? So let's move on. Individual bilingualism. Here we focus on one individual. We focus on the linguistic competence of one person, individual persons. When we talk about individual bilingualism, we talk about and we focus on the linguistic competence of individual persons. We focus on the linguistic competence of individual persons with regard to their L1 and L2. Language 1, language 2. The first language and the second language. Their competence in each one of them. Okay, we move on. Now, since we are talking about L1 and L2, we need to have, we talk a bit about what is this L1 and what is L2, because they might sound like simple, okay? You tell me, well, it's my first language, and then, but there is discussion, there are issues when we go into these. This term is used in different overlapping ways. In different overlapping ways, and can mean the first language learned, the stronger language, the mother tongue, the language most used, and if you look carefully into these, they simply deal with the characteristics and features of the L1, of the first language. So, a first language, it is the first language you learned, that's a feature of it. It's also the stronger language, the individual is stronger, is better in talking and speaking in his terms of his linguistic competence regarding L1. It's also the mother tongue with one of the features. He learns it at childhood with his parents. And also it is the language mostly used. The person uses the first language more often than the second language. So all of these are describe, they describe characteristics of L1, first language. L2, second language. This term is used in different overlapping ways and can mean the second language, the weaker language, somehow. Here we have different degrees between people. A language that is not the mother tongue, for sure. The child doesn't learn it when with his parents, when he's growing, during his childhood. He learns it only when he's grown up. Okay? The less used language. Right? Now, I'm sure if you look at yourselves and your own ways of living and using languages, that's what happens to you. I'm sure that when, with regard to your L1, you are better in terms of competence in L1. You use it more often. Okay? It's your mother tongue, right? But your L2, like French, it is the second language. You learn it only later at school. You don't learn it when you are a child at home. It's weaker in terms of competence. If you compare your competence in Amazigh and your linguistic competence in French, in Amazigh, of course, it's better. It's not the mother tongue. Why? Because you don't learn it at home. You learn it only in school. And it is less used in your everyday life. You use more often, you use the L1. You don't use the L2. Second language sometimes used to cover third or further languages. Sometimes we can use it to refer to even third or other languages. Sometimes, not all the time. It's not important. So that's for individual bilingualism. What is societal bilingualism? When we talk about societal bilingualism, we focus on the roles and functions of different languages in one society. So we are moving from describing the languages spoken by one individual to the languages spoken by the whole speech community, by the whole society. Focus on the roles and functions of different languages in one society. How different languages are used, for which functions, who speaks what language, for with whom and when, within the whole society. And Morocco for sure is one good example of that. It's even further than that, because Morocco is not just a bilingual country, it's a multilingual country, because we have more than 2 languages spoken in this country. Another thing that we have to differentiate is second language versus foreign language. Second language can be used to describe a language widely spoken in the country of the learner. In our context, what is it? What is the second language in our context, Morocco? French. Second language used to describe a language widely spoken in the country of the learner. Okay, so we are all learners, and in our country, that's French. Okay, that's the second language. And then we're going to compare French with English. So, French is a second language, but English is a foreign language. Foreign languages or foreign language refers to a language taught in school. It is taught in school, the same like French, but there is a difference between French and English in our country, right? What is that difference? Which is not normally the foreign language, English in our case, not normally used as a means of instruction in schools or as a language of communication within the country, in the community, or in the bureaucracy. French, it is taught in school, and English also taught in school. We learn it in school. But the difference is that French, especially at lower levels, primary to baccalaureate, French is also used as a language to teach subjects. Okay? But English only at later stages. We learn it only as a language up to baccalaureate. But when you go to the Department of English, that's when you start, having this. French to teach you sociolinguistics, or to teach you whatever kind of discipline. Another difference between the second language and the foreign language, between French and English, is that French is widely spoken, widely used in the community, widely used in the country, in the community, or in the bureaucracy. Yes or no? But French is not. If you go to administrations, okay, you want to have some papers or whatever, you don't speak English, you don't use French. You can have it either in French or Arabic. Yes or no? So that's the difference between a foreign language and a second language. Second language can be used to describe a language widely spoken in the country of the learner, in the administration, in parliament, in TV, in the radio, in the newspapers, in the advertisements, in restaurants, in cafes, in the beach, in wherever you go, you see it's used. But English, no, it's not widely used. It is used, English, but not widely as the second language, not as widely as French. Okay, very little used in the community and in the bureaucracy. It is used in the bureaucracy as well. For example, for you, if you want to travel, like especially for foreign countries to follow your studies, they ask you translation of your diplomas and your certificates in English. So you go and you do the translation, certified translation, but not very rarely that you can have this. Not like the case of French. Is English a second language or foreign language? There is a mistake there. It is a foreign language in our country. It is a foreign language. It's not a second language. But in Hong Kong, for instance, or if you don't want to go up to Hong Kong, you can go only to Egypt if you wish so. Okay, it's near. So Egypt, the second language there is English instead of French for while, colonialism. So that's why because we were colonized by the French, now French is our second language, but they were colonized by the British, and their second language is English. In Hong Kong, it's the same thing, okay? They have English there. Don't write all that, okay? There's no need. It has to do with different issues. So, in order to continue with the questions that sociolinguists try to answer, okay, so what are the roles and functions of different languages varieties in a society? And in this, for bilingualism, okay, let me go back. What are the roles and functions of different language varieties in a society? Moroccan Arabic, Amazigh, French, English in Morocco. How are these languages used in Morocco? Who speaks what language, to whom, when, and where? That's what sociolinguistics try to investigate among all these languages used in Morocco. In other contexts, you can have only two, okay? It depends on the speech communities. In our speech community, we have more than this, two. Now we move on and talk about another concept called diglossia. People who have already heard this concept and heard talks about this concept, can you raise your hands? Students who have already heard this concept, diglossia. Don't worry, I will not ask you what it means. Okay? I just ask you, have you already heard about it? No? Never? Ever? Sure? Okay. It's very simple. That's Morocco. When we talk about diglossia, we talk about Morocco. Okay? We talk about the languages spoken in Morocco. If you focus on Morocco, and please focus just on Standard Arabic and Moroccan Arabic. Okay? Can you forget people who are Amazigh? Can you forget about Amazigh a little bit? Okay? Now, for these two varieties, Standard Arabic and Moroccan Arabic. And then again, if we go and ask about how are these two language varieties used in Morocco, Standard Arabic, where is, let's say, where is and how is Standard Arabic used, and where is and how is Moroccan Arabic used? Now, can you tell me where do we use Standard Arabic? Inside the classes. Where else? Yes? In general, it's formal situations, but let us go to the details. So we have classroom. Other examples of formal context or situations? Media, bureaucracy, administration, formal meetings, in the mosques, for example. Where? Standard Arabic. أمي أريد Okay? So, we will come to that when we talk about Moroccan Arabic, and that's the context where we use Moroccan Arabic. Yes? Yes? Quran, of course, that, and in general, it is written. You remember the modes, discourse modes that Tafel talks about last time, written or oral. So we find it in written more, okay, and oral as well, but in written modes, okay. So in the literature, there was one guy, a person or a sociolinguist who lived in Arabian countries a lot, and also he lived in Greece, etc. And this person, he was a sociolinguist. He was interested in the way how languages are used, how people use languages, and what are the reasons, where, who speaks what language, where and when. Right? That was his question all the time. And he noticed this difference. He noticed that, for example, in Arabian countries, Standard Arabic is used in these formal contexts, while Moroccan Arabic is used in informal contexts, like at home, like with friends, like cafes, and so on and so forth. Okay? And therefore, he said that these communities that have something like this, they have a phenomenon that he refers, and he calls it diglossia. Okay? So, for example, since we have this in Morocco, so in Morocco we have diglossia. And he comes with some kind of terminology. He says that this is the guy, by the way. Okay, no. I will show you the picture. So he said that the Standard Arabic, he refers to it as the high variety. Why? Because it's used in high contexts, formal contexts, etc. High. Okay? While the Moroccan Arabic, he refers to it as low variety because it's used in informal situations and so on and so forth. Okay? In informal discussions between friends and so on and so forth. So that's diglossia. And the name of the guy is Ferguson. Ferguson, okay? He talked about so diglossia means the use of two varieties in a society distinguished by function, the function for which we use each language. The function for which we use Standard Arabic is different from the function for which we use Moroccan Arabic. We use Standard Arabic to do business, to go to the administration, papers, bureaucracy, media, writing, literature, etc. But we use Moroccan Arabic for buying and selling, for everyday life communication, for French, for friends, cafes, intimate context, etc. The use of two varieties in a society distinguished by function. High and low varieties. He says that there are high and low varieties. The high variety or typical functions of the high variety are: it is used in literature, education, law, government, administration, news broadcasts. H variety is used in formal. H variety is used, is used. Is used in formal official occasions. Example, delivering a speech, holding a meeting. The H variety is usually learned in school. We don't learn it as a mother tongue. So therefore, Standard Arabic for us is not the mother tongue. Our mother tongue is Moroccan Arabic because that's the one we learn when we are kids, babies, from the language in which we are socialized. Okay? Please? Yes. Now, for the low variety is used for everyday, more informal purposes. The low variety is usually an L1 and learned at home. And to be more specific, the first one who coined the word diglossia, la diglossie, he's Marseille in 1930, 1931. He was the first one to coin the word diglossia. And he defines diglossia as, in French, because he's French sociolinguist, la concurrence entre une langue savante, écrite, et une langue vulgaire, parfois exclusivement parlée. That's the small definition that he gave. And that's exactly what you have in the explanation there. Okay? And then after that came Ferguson, American sociolinguist, and he wrote an article. And in this article, he gave it the title Diglossia, 1959. And this is the guy. So can we continue with characteristics of, we're going to finish very shortly. Characteristics of the high varieties and the low varieties. So the H variety has high prestige. If you look at Standard Arabic, we do consider it as a prestigious language. It has more prestige than Moroccan Arabic, yes or no? So H variety has high prestige. So, diglossia, okay, that's fine. It's prestige. Okay, high variety has more prestige. That's the only thing you have to know. And if you don't take some notes, as I told you, you will have it later on in the PDF format or in video to take your notes. Now in Singapore, again, Morocco is not the only one who has this. So Singapore, you have Mandarin. Okay, is the high variety. Singapore English formal variety. And the low variety is Cantonese, Hokkien, Singapore English informal variety. They have two types of Englishes, in other words. They have the high English, or the high variety, and the low variety. Mandarin, and like Standard Arabic for us, and Moroccan Arabic. The case of Morocco, and that's Ferguson, that's the name of the guy, the American sociolinguist I told you, 1959. And he referred to Standard Arabic as the formal variety, as the high variety, and Moroccan Arabic as the informal variety, the low variety. That's the diglossia in relation to our Moroccan context. And this is the guy. Okay. Next lecture, inshallah, we will study his article, because there are many things we have to talk about in differentiating between the high variety and the low variety. Thank you.